What's up, CSE? It's Mr. Taylor coming to you virtually during the coronavirus shutdown. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope your families are doing well. This is the lesson for March 18th. We're going to jump into it, talk about what we're going to do for today. So, our lesson target, we're learning to analyze a dystopian short story for its theme. So that will take us through a quick mini lesson on theme analysis. We're going to look at the story you should have read for last class, which is We Ate the Children Last by Jan Martel. And then by the end of the class, and there will be either a Google form or a Google Doc template attached to that assignment for March 18th, you will have drafted that theme response supported by evidence from the text. So, without further ado, let's get into that mini lesson. Some of this you will have seen before, so we'll make that quick. Remember, a theme is the author's implied message on a matter of profound importance to humanity. So it is implied, which means the author is not going to come out and just tell you explicitly, oh, love conquers all, right? You got to put it together. You got to make inferences from what's in the text. Also, it's going to be on a matter of profound importance to humanity. So that's everybody outside of the text. You, me, pretty much everybody out there. It should be universal, right? So again, as an example, I know we went through before, but love conquers all. In your story, you might have a character who's strongly powered by the emotion of love for either a loved one or their family. And that motivates them to overcome lots of different obstacles, and that would be your evidence for that theme. All right, and so it should be a complete thought here. Love conquers all. It shouldn't just be love because that's a subject. Love conquers all. Got another example here. This one really would apply well to the Hunger Games. Only the fittest survive. So again, survival would be your subject, and this would be your complete thought. There are some other examples here, but these are more abstract and we don't necessarily need to cover them for this lesson. So these are our steps. Again, this is a review. To get to the theme statement, you want to be familiar with the text. Then you want to come up with some topics that relate to humanity as a whole. Next, you want to complete this sentence, and I give you this stem, right? The author believes that, and then you insert what you think the author, what message the author is trying to convey to you about that subject. And then lastly, you want to delete the author believes that from your statement. And you should still have a complete statement. You should still have a complete thought that gives you that theme statement, but it'll be much more concise, shorter, to the point. This is something that we didn't note before when we went through theme, but felt like this would be particularly useful for you guys with looking at We Ate the Children Last. Things to notice in the text, right, to determine the theme. So some things that we can look at. First is the protagonist, right? This is the main character, the one whose perspective we mainly have, the one who we sympathize with. Do they change in some way? Okay, what happens to them? How are they affected by events in the story? Those are all important. Next, statements of the theme. So these aren't, again, they aren't going to be explicit, but they're going to be very clear hints, and these usually happen at the beginning or the end of the work that can give you very strong hints as to what the author's message is. All right, so that's another place to look. Clues in the title. Titles are always incredibly important. That is going to be the case with our example today. Titles. You should always keep the title in mind when you're analyzing a text, whether it be theme or really any other major analysis you're doing. And then lastly, the conflict, right? And how it resolves. Conflict does relate to what happens to the protagonist, obviously, but the conflict can often be seen as the point of the story, right? And the point and the author's message on a theme, those are going to be very closely related as well. So that's something that you want to pay attention to. And again, it is going to be something that we see with our example using Divergent today. If you want to, pause these slides to take any of these down or take a picture with your phone, please feel free to do that. I'm going to keep things moving and try to expedite this for you guys, make it go a little bit quicker. I've linked in the assignment for today basically the summary of Divergent from 2014, that film. If you've already seen this film, or you'd like to see it in its totality, you don't have to go to that link. You don't have to watch this necessarily. If you've read the book, you're already familiar with it, then you don't have to read it. But to understand our mini lesson for today and the modeling for today, you do need to have a familiarity of it with the characters, plots, and themes. And I think they mean motifs here. And this is the problem with just Googling theme, is that you often just get motifs or subjects. So be careful about that. But you do need to be familiar with Divergent. So if you need to do that, take a moment, just pause the screencast, go back in the assignment, click that link so that you can check this out if you need to do so. But we are going to go right into the modeling for this. So again, trying to sort of keep this quick for you guys so that you can get to those responses. First thing we want to do, right, is look at some subjects that came up in this story, okay? And we've got a number. This is not, an exhaustive or totally complete list of all the subjects you could have come up with, but these are a lot of the big ones. So factions, clearly people dividing themselves up into these camps that think and believe different things. Mind control, brainwashing, obviously very critical to the plot, by the erudites to take over the government. Deceptive appearances, right? Characters sort of act one way, but they think a different way, and that comes out at certain points. Testing, Beatrice or Treese, has to test to get into a certain faction. She has to test once she's in the Dauntless faction as well. Bravery pertains particularly to the Dauntless faction, right? Knowledge pertains to the erudite faction. So, and in fact, each of these factions can be seen as sort of encompassing or embodying, these big subjects that do matter in the real world. So those are important subjects there. Each of those, and I've only chosen two, but there are more important subjects that way. So the next thing you want to do, and there isn't going to be a place for this specifically in your response, but I do want you to think about how the subject that you chose connects to the real world, just to sort of think, okay, how might there be a message here? So I discuss a little bit here political polarization, and what that means is, and I elaborate on that with Republicans and Democrats, political polarization is you have different camps or different groups of people that believe very strongly in different things, and they go to the poles, right? They go to these opposite sides. If you want to think of like the North and the South Pole, right? They're on the opposite side of the planet, right? Republicans and Democrats are on opposite sides of the political spectrum, and they have very, very different views on a number of different things that are important to our culture, right? And so often they refuse, and quite unfortunately often they refuse to listen to one another. So I just use healthcare, education, defense. So just to use as an example, healthcare, President Trump supporters believe that should be privatized, whereas Bernie Sanders supporters, the more liberal Democratic side, would say that we need free healthcare for all, right? And President Trump supporters are often seen as supporting the more wealthy members of society. Bernie Sanders is often seen as the more working class, less affluent side of society that he's supporting. So, and often, these, we look at Fox News that, is kind of only speaking to President Trump supporters, and Bernie Sanders supporters might only be watching MSNBC, which is the more liberal-leaning news outlet. So we see this. I mean, and this is a big deal. We're in an election year, and which way we choose to go, very much, there are going to be very different outcomes, right? So factions are definitely a part of our everyday life. All right, so the next thing you want to do is start to think about, okay, what is the author's message about this, given what I know about the story, right, and in Divergent. And here, we have, in looking at the plot, right, and so one of our clues there is the plot. I would say that's the first thing to look at is the plot. Is what does, how do factions get us into trouble? Well, you've got the erudites who think that their way is the only right way and that they think that they should take things over, right? They know more than everybody else, right? And so they're going to, that sort of justifies what they're doing, they feel, and they use that to sort of hatch what I think most people would say is sort of an evil or nefarious plot to take things over. And so that's problematic, right? And this is a stark contrast to Therese, who can transcend the factions, right? She is divergent, right? And because of that, she's able to do a lot of things, succeed in a lot of different ways, both personally as well as for her society as a whole, that enable her to overcome this evil plot for one side to just sort of take over everything. So I think a good theme statement would be for this, it's not the only way to word it, but being able to transcend factions enables individuals and groups to overcome daunting challenges. And that can apply to our world, again, referring up to here. Maybe if Democrats and Republicans could work together, we'd be able to, better respond to some of the daunting challenges, coronavirus being one of them, right? But often, unfortunately, what happens is we just get into one camp, and maybe we don't get everybody's perspective, and that leads us to not be able to overcome things as well as we could have. So, what evidence from the story actually supports what we're talking about here? Well, first thing, I start with, we sort of follow Therese closely, her specifically, right? And how does being divergent help her personally? Well, she succeeds at being a Dauntless, right? In particular, when she's taking the test that the Dauntless camp is giving, or the faction is giving, because she's able, and this shows that she's able to, because she's able to transcend those boundaries, she's able to gain personal strength from it and succeed at that challenge, okay? So that's my first piece of evidence, and you always want to give your evidence here. For you guys, it will be, I'll ask that you do quotes if you could. I don't think there's any page numbers, so just a quote would suffice. I'm obviously using a paraphrase because I'm using a film recap, but a quote would be good for you guys. And then signal your analysis with "this shows" is fine. Or "we see here" would be another way of doing it, to signal your analysis of that. My next piece of analysis here is that sort of reaches out beyond Therese specifically, but the fact that she's able to, that she is divergent enables her to defeat this more global, this broader plot to take over the entire government, right? And basically this does show, again, that because she's able to see these different perspectives, because she has the abilities of more than one faction, she's basically immune to these evil influences. And we can see this today. Like if you if you're more open-minded, if you're able to see different perspectives, maybe you won't be as prone to manipulation through, you guys have heard about Russian meddling in our elections, right? Those Russian meddling efforts were very much targeted towards people who already sort of had preconceived notions about one party or the other, and they basically just sort of pushed them further in one direction or the other. They were susceptible because they already had these prejudices, the people that were manipulated by the Russian election meddling efforts. So just as a real world example again, but here we see in the story that because she's divergent, she's able to succeed. Okay, so that was a real quick modeling of how to get to your theme statement. So again, check in on the assignment for March 18th, and just by the end of that, you should be able to come up with a good theme statement for We Ate the Children Last. That's it for today. Hope you guys are well again, and we'll be checking in later. I don't know if I'll be doing a screencast every class, but certainly for ones where there's more instruction needed, I think this is a good avenue for us to reach out. So anyway, take care. Be well.